Hey folks, how's it going? Dr. Spin. Eclectic album reviews and general musical meanderings. Got another 4 albums for you in this big exploration of new music I'm putting in front of myself for this first part of the year. 4 albums, again, of 8 for this week. These are all tier 1 entries. This is going to be setting the stage for everything I've listened to all year, so it's pretty exciting for all this new stuff. Let's go ahead and get started with it. So the first one up is The Strokes, The New Abnormal.
Actually, no thanks, I'm okay. Not even sad, we lost my way. I want new friends, but then I want me. And making plans while I'm on TV. Thought it was them, but maybe it's me. I want new friends, then I want me. And the 80s.
And the claim to the Strokes' fame was their 2001 album, This Is It. And this is a very key pre-9/11 millennial pop album that set the standard for a lot of things that happened to follow in that next 10 years. And I was only aware of this album kind of tangentially. I downloaded a couple of Strokes albums back in the Napster days, but I didn't really follow This Is It. And I think in this case, that's probably helped me out because a lot of the criticism that I've seen of the New Abnormal, even though people refer to it as a return to form, has to do with its inability to sort of recapture the really compact, direct craftsmanship of This Is It. But without that reference, for me, I think it's a really great throwback to that era of indie pop. The New Abnormal wears its influences on its sleeve, to the point at which, in the liner notes, Julian Casablancas gives credit to Billy Idol and gives credit to the Psychedelic Furs for their contributions to the album, which really means he lifted some of their melodies. And that's fine. You know, music always comes from somewhere. There's a lot more subtle references to Soft Cell, Pink Floyd, and I think a little bit later, even Phoenix. But the thing that really holds these disparate influences together, I think, is a very real feeling that at heart, Julian Casablancas is definitely a Stones guy more than a Beatles guy. The next up I got, Mandy Indiana's I've Seen a Way. Now, don't let that opening track Love Theme 4K fool you. This is not like a introspective synthesizer album. Within a few minutes of listening to that first track, you're soon going to be pummeled with drum sounds that sound like that they were recorded in a cave, or vocals that sound like they were screamed from the end of the mall. And that's because they were. Mandy Indiana is, at their heart, an electronic group, but they really make an effort to sort of pull in real-world sounds that give them some leverage to the sort of the dystopian feel to the album. Their work is disruptive and confrontational, almost like a horror movie sometimes, but it still maintains a sense of pacing that allows its point to get across to the listener before it kind of chases the listener off in the face of its own strident side. Now, I found it interesting that critics seem to be struggling so hard to define what this album is. If you look at what some of the people say about it, it's an experimental noise album, or a post-punk noise electronic album. But to me, it just sounds like an industrial album. Like it have music critics so soon forgotten about Ministry and KMFDM and the sound of wax tracks. Immediately, the sound of this album brings me back to that, but with a more contemporary take on it. So it's a refreshed version of those abrasive but inviting albums that occurred as the 90s came around in the underground. Okay, next up I got Births Born.
Broken bandages leading our smiles throughout the line. All our love is injected to empty veins. If you wanted to live this loneliness, live this pain.
Now, around 2011, I was living in Austin, and I found this album on the racks of Waterloo Records. It looked like it was a Antimatter Universe Roger Dean painting, and that was the album The Weirding by Astra. And I immediately knew what this album was going to be about just by looking at the cover. And sure enough, it's this sort of great chunk of retro prog that they're very careful about crafting a musical patina on that really made it harken back to that time frame. And they followed that up with an album called The Black Chord, which I thought was an even a more well-crafted album than The Weirding was. But shortly after that album, the band seemed to just sort of dissolve. There were sort of talks about something happening, and then it just sort of fell apart. And I kind of felt like there was some unfinished business that Astra had to offer. Well, sure enough, now in 2023, Birth arises. And 2 members of the quartet that is Birth, half the band, comes from Astra. The lead singer, keyboard player, / main songwriter, and the guitar player. So it's no wonder that they sound like Astra. It's no wonder that they're still trying to chase down that retro prog feel. Because essentially Born is the follow-up to The Black Chord. And like Astra, Birth paints its pictures with lots of mellotron and Hammond organ and the occasional Moog solo. And that by itself is the palette of retro prog music. And on top of that, the sort of agile drumming that kind of recalls Michael Giles, who's the original drummer for King Crimson. And then an obvious affinity for all things Greg Lake. Early King Crimson, ELP, that style of progressive rock music, and then counterbalance it with the more angular styles you'll hear with Van de Graaff Generator. All these things kind of pop up on Born. So in short, you can kind of say these guys play it like they used to. And finally, Lowe's, Things We Lost in the Fire.
Bought some sweet, 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 sweet sunflowers and gave them to the night.
When ZZ Top traded in their cowboy hats for sunglasses and turned on the synthesizers in 1980, I often refer to that as them going on their mission, kind of like the Blues Brothers. Around 2015, Low also went on a similar mission, started with 1s and 6s, and they sort of got some momentum with Double Negative, and then finally sort of found its culmination, I think, in Hey What, which is my album of the year in 2022. But the history of Low reaches way, way back before that. The band has been around for nearly 20 years before that, reaching back as far as 1995. And have, just like their music, have crafted a body of work and a slow burn over the course of that entire time that is, according to critics, amazingly consistent and is a vast area of unexplored territory for me musically to check out. Things We Lost in the Fire was released in 2001, which is the same year as the Strokes released that debut album we were talking about earlier. And it really reveals the sort of effortless beauty that went into Low's work. Now, beauty's always been there, but after their mission, they took it upon themselves to find this beautiful music that they create and sort of smash it with crushing levels of like cathartic distortion. Here, their joyous floating melodies are subverted by like dark lyrics that have to do with mortality and longing. And this balance, I think, is something that was established super early on in the very unique relationship between Alan Sparhawk and Mimi Parker as husband and wife, because he seems to be a very expressive person, and she seems to be a very restrained and reserved person. And the balance that they strike personality-wise expresses itself in their music so amazingly well. It's like the magic thing that makes Low work. That's all I got for you guys this time around. So if you like the video, please like and subscribe and share it out with your friends. Also follow me over on Spotify. Of course, tracks are going up in my 2024 playlist. And please join my Patreon if you want to be involved in this year's Viewer's Choice playlist. And I'll see you next time. I'll catch you guys on the flip side.